Good afternoon. It is the Tuesday afternoon update on Tropical Storm Elsa here, located in the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. As always, these thoughts are mine alone, and in making decisions regarding this system, please refer to your local weather office, the National Hurricane Center, and your local officials for all the latest information pertaining to your specific area. Well, we have quite the interesting tropical cyclone here this afternoon. As you can see, you have a lower level circulation here that is almost just outside of the convection here. You have a lot of the western half of the circulation actually exposed here. You can see that very clearly here, but you have a intense convective burst here trying to rotate around and come up shear here. We have a lot of mid-level shear affecting the system right now, which is giving this lopsided look. As you can see, most of the stuff is on the east side here. You're getting a lot of rain in Florida and some heavy wind. Earlier was observed in Key West here, winds up to 45 knots, which translates to about 50 miles per hour in Key West earlier this morning, and now we have the system coming up north at about 9 miles per hour and is going to be gradually making that northeastern turn here, somewhere in between Tampa and Cedar Key here, where it should make landfall. But if we look at the system from a larger point of view here, you have a trough interaction that is also doing one or two things. It is moving all this convection over to the east side and preventing the system from really symmetrizing very well, but it is also ventilating that convection. And this is typical of trough interactions with tropical cyclones when the tropical cyclone is kind of moving with the flow of the trough here. This storm is moving due north right now and will be turning to the northeast as the trough continues to push it to the east and will gradually tug it into Florida here. And it will be accelerating upon approach due to the trough interaction that it is going to be dealing with. But the flow is also generally out of the southwest here. So the southwesterly flow is shearing the system, but it is also providing lift for the convection here. There's some baroclinic forcing going on here with the trough interaction, as this is helping ventilate the convection and continue to force the convection upward here, as you're seeing. And so essentially what we're going to be seeing here, if we look at the radar, credit to Mark Nissenbaum here at Florida State, you can see a couple things here. You can see that there is a periodically the storm will try to wrap around a band of sorts around the center, because the center is right in here. And you can see that there's like some banding here that is trying to wrap up shear, because the shear vector is out of the southwest here. And so as this tries to do this, you will see a structure enhance temporarily, and then it will collapse, and you will see what is happening here right now. We're in a collapsing phase where the stuff that is trying to grow up shear is just getting blown into the storm's circulation center. So that will prevent the system from strengthening quickly here, even though it is in a somewhat favorable upper level environment. The mid-level environment is very unfavorable. Also, if you look back at the water vapor imagery here, you can see that there's some dry air being forced into the system, which is preventing the western side from really expanding any convection here. Especially if we look back at the visible satellite here, you can see that a lot of this cumulus field that is in the western two-thirds of the system really is convectively anemic this afternoon, and will likely remain so as this dry air continues to get pushed into the system. But we are watching this convective burst here as it tries to rotate up shear, and if it is able to rotate up shear a little bit and maybe wrap up a little bit, maybe the system will be able to strengthen just a little more. And it's not very far from hurricane strength now, so there are hurricane warnings up for the west coast of Florida. If we look here, you can see now the National Hurricane Center explicitly forecasts a hurricane to make landfall somewhere in between Tampa and the Big Bend, the northern part of the Big Bend region of Florida here. You can see these hurricane warnings are up now. And if we actually look at the recon data here, you can see how lopsided the system is. You can see here on the southwestern end that there's not really a whole lot of wind here on this side, but if we look back, you can even see that some of the flight level winds, actually, there's a band of hurricane force flight level winds, not hurricane force surface winds. We are dealing with maybe 60 knot surface winds here, and the pressure averages around 1,000 to 998 millibars here as this is coming northward. And so we do have a much stronger, very lopsided system here to the east side. You have a lot of strong wind, and this will soon be affecting the Florida west coast as this drifts almost due northward and maybe a little bit northeastward. You can see just barely that it is moving just a little bit to the east here, not much. But as we continue forward here, let's check the peak surge graphic here. If the storm is able to intensify into a hurricane, that doesn't really change much with the surge impacts, but given that this is a flatter part of the coast here, the impacts will be a lot more drastic compared to if it were impacting a more elevated part of the coast, maybe like in western Gulf Coast, where the barrier islands actually do end up protecting the coast a little more. But there's not a lot of terrain in this area that is even remotely high. So surge can impact a little further inland here in the Tampa Bay area, especially along the northwestern Gulf Coast of Florida. And so if you're in Tampa, you do need to be taking this very seriously, as 3 to 5 feet of surge, while may not seem like a lot, is a lot for Tampa, considering how flat the area is. And really, this is not something that you want coming up into Tampa. You don't really get hurricanes very often in Tampa, so this is something that you do need to be taking seriously. I know it has been a while since Tampa has been explicitly threatened by a hurricane here. Last one, I think, was Irma, and Irma ended up going to the south of Tampa, ended up not providing the surge that was expected here. But this will likely go north of Tampa here. And as you can see, if we look back at the recon data here, you can see how broad the wind field is over here. It doesn't take a direct hit from the system to have the effects of a hurricane or strong tropical storm here. And so you will likely be dealing with 60 to 75 mile per hour winds here as the storm approaches. This wind field is not very concentrated. We don't have a really tight core and then some winds on the outside. This is this is a messy system, and it will be a mess to deal with. And if we look back at the visible imagery, you can see all this. This is a pretty broad swath of rain here that is going to be moving northward, and this is also heavy weather here. If we look again back at the radar here provided by Mark Nissenbaum, you can see these bands already starting to come ashore here, have some hitting south of Port Charlotte here near Naples and Marco Island here where Irma made landfall. And you have a lot of these bands are going to come in and you're going to have a lot of strong winds here with them, maybe 40 to 50 mile per hour winds. But as we get closer to the core of the storm, the max wind band here that you're seeing, as this comes on shore, you're going to be dealing with 60 to 75 mile per hour winds, depending on how strong the storm is and when it is in one of these phases that is attempting to wrap, or if it's in one of the decaying phases. And in one of the decaying phases, you're going to be on the lower end of the storm's winds, and when it's in one of the wrapping phases where it's trying to wrap around that convection that I talked about earlier, you're going to be dealing with probably some stronger winds closer to hurricane force, maybe 70, 75 miles per hour, and that can do some damage and is definitely going to be able to knock out power for people who are in the path of this. So do please be taking this very seriously if you're along this coast. I know hurricanes don't happen very often, and this doesn't seem like a very strong storm, but a low-end hurricane can still cause a lot of problems. And please do be safe if you are on the coast, and be very wary of your surge zone. Listen to your local weather office, and stay tuned to the National Hurricane Center for the latest. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next video.